It's good afternoon. Today we're at a presumptuous place today. It's very mysterious, these surrounding areas. But today we're at St Peter and St Paul in Stallingborough, which is in the borough of Lincolnshire. So there is quite a mix of blend of ancient history here and up to the modern day. Well, let's go check it out. So there has been evidence in previous history here that goes all the way back to prehistoric times and the Iron Age. But there was an ancient site here where some lord lived here in ancient times. There was like some lord or baron, and he owned all the surrounding areas. And there's the church here that's built on St Avbor, which could translate to Arthur. It's in the resting place of the saints. So yeah, there's a lot of history here, but this church has been rebuilt after a series of destructions. So we'll talk about that when we're on the way round. Well, King John of the Magna Carta and the rounds of times of the folk legend of Robin Hood, King Henry III granted Stallingborough for an annual fair and a market town. So in the 13th century in England, he granted permission for an annual fair to be held in this area. Also a bustling market trade for the settlements here and surrounding areas. Well, the Church of St Peter and St Paul, as you can see, looks fairly modern. There is a lot of ancient stonework, stonemasonry, and then from this looks like the Norman period again, where we've seen it's quite prevalent in other churches and sites. But this has been rebuilt in the 18th century. So we're going to talk about this. So during the 13th century and into the 14th century, there's one thing that struck England was a devastating effect on the country, really, and the Black Death, and this site in particular, calamity happened.
The first impulse is to run. And when there's no place left to run, pray. Pray like there's no tomorrow. Because for the people dying all around you, tomorrow will never come.
See, again, evidence of the earlier church. They've done the rebuild again in this Tudor era. So this is the original foundations of the church. There is evidence that I've seen coming into the church today as well, where there is stonework hanging around. There's some on the grounds here and in the village. We've seen there's a beautiful cottage that I do believe that was made from the rubble and the devastating destruction of this historical site that laid here previously. So it's a beautiful, unique church. So yeah, there's this cottage down the road. So we've got the traditional, the Victorian era graveyards here that's so prevalent throughout the UK. There's some fantastic headstones. Some of the detail is so prevalent. You've got the ISH again for Christ and the sacred vines. It's very picturesque though, with all the overgrowing nettles and thistles and the overhanging trees. We've got a more modern graveyard over the on side, but it's particularly interesting, this one. But I've come across this headstone here. It's very unique and unusual, looks very medieval. So you've got a skull and crossbones and the hourglass. What a beautiful monument. It's very skull and crossbones, esoteric meanings there. Very interesting. So as you can, we've previously mentioned in the video, is your ancient stone masonry and the foundations, and then you've got this Tudor era of a rebuild. So you've had the calamity of the Black Death that swept across the UK and Europe. Millions of people died. This particular area of Stallingborough is one of the worst hit in the regions. A lot of people died, and I do believe there's been a destruction of this church, fires through the Black Plague, and then there have been slight destructions from the invasion of the great heathen army of the Vikings, and then the Norman conquest, and also again during the English Civil War and the forces between Oliver Cromwell and King Charles I. So this church has seen devastation after devastation, and it's quite prevalent here. You've got the historical original site, and then the series of renovations. So you have the Jacobite. It's just very beautiful and a clearly a unique church here. So obviously it's not got my traditional visitation here of the glorifying medieval architecture. I've chosen this site because of all the calamity and the destruction that the area faced. So it's quite an unusual one to what we've traditionally done on these Barefoot Chronicles. So I thought we had to mention it briefly. So we came here. Obviously there's some, obviously the Commonwealth war graves. There's a few here as well that lie on the ground. And the outer cascade of protection of trees, and especially this prevalent relationship between the church and the pine trees. I'll be going into more detail in a future video. As you can see here, these ancient headstones. I'm not sure what these are, ancient medieval site grave headstones as well, or monuments for prominent figures throughout history in the area. And then we've got this like obelisk here, which is the sundial. So again, is this prevalent relationship with the worship of the sun and Jesus, the Son of God. Etymology here. There's yes, this ancient sundial. I'm not sure if this is quite in a different era, and it's not the correct stone to the original plinth. So I do believe This was desecrated during maybe the Viking days, where this would have been a big Celtic cross, and it's been shattered in half by the Vikings. And then in later editions they've put a sundial on. Oh yeah, I hope you have liked it. St. Peter St. Paul. It's a very unusual church to our usual standards, but it's packed in history, packed in heaps of history here. So I hope you've enjoyed this one. It's a bit of a brief one, but very interesting in the whole of the setting. So I hope we're going to wrap it up here now. So I hope you enjoyed St. Peter St. Paul. I wish you all a good day. Remember to take care of yourselves and each other. God bless.